Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Efrem Graham. Ahead today, Israelis rejoicing as the hostages are reunited with their loved ones, and President Donald Trump says the prayers of millions have been answered as his Middle East peace plan takes effect. But Hamas is still posing a threat in parts of Gaza, public executing its opponents and suspected collaborators with Israel. We're going to bring you the story from Jerusalem. Christians from around the world traveling to Jerusalem to celebrate the biblical Feast of Tabernacles and showing their support for Israel. And here at home, Senator Tim Scott talks about restoring unity to a divided America through Judeo-Christian values. All those stories and more right now on CBN NewsWatch.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
It is Tuesday, the 14th day of October. We're going to begin this half hour with the implementation of the peace agreement in the Middle East as Israelis are rejoicing at the return of the surviving hostages. But at the same time, there are concerns remaining about Hamas in Gaza as the terrorist group is publicly executing their opponents. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell brings us the story. He's reporting from Jerusalem.
The 20 hostages are reuniting with their families and loved ones and beginning the long road to recovery.
As we know, the road to recovery for both of the returnees and their families will be long, and we will be here for them every step of the way with humility, care, and sensitivity.
In Sharm El-Sheik, Egypt, world leaders gathered as President Trump and the heads of Egypt, Turkey, and Qatar signed a peace agreement that said in part, "We, the undersigned, welcome the truly historic commitment and implementation by all parties to the Trump peace agreement, ending more than 2 years of profound suffering and loss, opening a new chapter for the region defined by hope, security, and a shared vision for peace and prosperity."
This is the day that people across the region and around the world have been working, striving, hoping, and praying for. They have done things over the last month that I think were really unthinkable. Nobody thought this could happen. With the historic agreement we've just signed, those prayers of millions have finally been answered.
In the meantime, in what some see as the seeds for future terror, Israel released nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners as part of the Gaza peace agreement. Many had been serving life sentences for terror attacks that killed many Israelis. Inside Gaza, Hamas has taken over areas the IDF has pulled out of and is publicly executing those who oppose their rule or are accused of collaborating with Israel. So far, Hamas has released only 4 of the 28 bodies of those Hamas killed during captivity, leaving families to question how long it will take to recover their remains. Meanwhile, Israelis continue to celebrate the return of the 20 hostages and the fulfillment of their dreams. Last week on the 700 Club, while Hamas was still negotiating, Gordon Robertson spoke with Lachey Miran Levy, wife of former hostage Omri Miran. He asked if she had hope that she'd see her husband come home soon.
I know that it's not over until it's not over, but like I say before, I always have my hope to see Omri again.
We'll join with you in a prayer to Hashem that once again you'll hear the cry, Abba, Abba, from your 2 little girls, and once again you'll see that smile in his eyes.
Monday, those prayers were answered as Omri and his family were reunited.
Beautiful. Chris Mitchell joins us now from Jerusalem with more. So, Chris, it's been a very emotional time to see the hostages reunions. But what can you tell us about the 24 bodies of the hostages that have yet to be released?
Well, Efrem, Hamas returned 4 bodies last night, and they say 24 are still owed under the deal. That's what Israel is saying. The remains of those 4, they did go for identification. Now, the families of many of these deceased say Hamas is violating the deal and that Hamas committed to returning all of the deceased in phase 1. The mediators say the talks are continuing to secure the release of the 24. Some are questioning why the delay. Well, the International Red Cross says recovery is harder than releasing the living hostages, and locating those bodies in collapsed areas and tunnels could take days or even weeks. And the concern for many here would be that Hamas uses that as an excuse to delay the return of those deceased And right now, Israel has less leverage than it has when it was controlling most of the Gaza Strip.
What is Hamas doing now to establish control in Gaza?
Well, you saw some of that in our report. They're really purging the resistance, those public executions, just brutal, Ephraim, to watch those. They're also battling clans, some of the clans in areas left by the IDF, and anyone who dared oppose Hamas during the war. These are the Hamas's top priorities. They want to eliminate any opposition, and in their own words, they call it purification before liberation. In other words, the phase of eliminating the quote-unquote traitors, and then that comes before the liberation of the land of Israel. And so this is Hamas's first stage before moving forward to their next stages.
What are they saying about disarming?
Well, they're saying quite openly, Ephraim, they have no intention of disarming or giving up power in Gaza. And those were the two core requirements of the ceasefire deal that it accepted just days ago. Hamas succeeded in terms about disarming, getting a clan in Khan Yunis, one of Gaza cities, to hand over its weapons to Hamas. So Hamas is actually disarming others in the Gaza Strip while not being disarmed itself. And this really does have broad implications going forward. They're really sending a deterrent message to all Gazans that Hamas has returned to rule the Strip with its brutal kind of and cruel enforcements. And it's really important. No one should have any illusions about what Hamas really has intended as the Gaza peace plan goes forward.
As we know, this is supposed to be phase one of the peace plan. So what comes next?
Well, what comes next is actually, the idea that Hamas will be disarmed and that there would be an international force or peace body. The peace body would be headed by President Trump. But what happens? What will happen when that President Trump or others see that Hamas's demands include that they won't disarm and that they're going to be part of a future entity ruling the Gaza Strip? So in Hamas's view, Ephraim, the war's not over. And, when you look at the whole thing in total, you have to realize there's a saying, the enemy gets a vote. So the Hamas is making its position clear after. And they also oppose this idea of excluding them, as I said, from any administration in the Gaza Strip. They're determined to be part of governing the Gaza Strip and all the Palestinian territories. They're calling for what they say is an urgent meeting to unify all the Palestinians' positions while continuing the resistance, as they say, in all its forms.
After this war with Hamas and the attacks from Iran, Hezbollah, is Israel stronger and more dominant in the Middle East than before?
Yeah, despite the challenges there in the Gaza Strip, certainly much stronger, much more dominant than it was than ever before. Certainly right after October 7th, the worst day in Israel's history since the Holocaust, they have degraded or destroyed most of their enemies. That would include Hamas, despite what they're doing right now, Hezbollah, the Houthis, the Iranian-backed militias in Iraq and Syria, and, of course, the main existential danger to Israel for decades was Iran's nuclear program. So right now there's a different landscape in the Middle East, and Israel is really projecting not only regional, but in fact global power, especially with the support of the Trump administration standing with it against Iran's nuclear program, for example, and standing behind it to really stand with the Jewish state, as we saw yesterday in a powerful way as President Trump addressed the Israeli Knesset.
So what do you have for us today on Jerusalem Dateline before we let you go?
Well, we have more analysis with CBN News correspondent Julie Stahl talking about the release of the 20 living hostages and also the Gaza peace plan going forward. We'll have that roundtable. We also have a survivor of October 7th talking about really what it was like to survive that horrific day. And also we have a story on Simchat Torah. Today, Ephraim, is the end. Yesterday was the end of the Feast of Tabernacles. Today is the celebration of Simchat Torah, the joy of the Torah. And that's going on in synagogues around Jerusalem and around Israel and the Jewish world today.
All right. Thank you so much. Our CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell, we always appreciate your insight. Look forward to seeing you again tomorrow and the rest of the week. I want to remind you at home, you can get the latest from Jerusalem Dateline at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can find the show on the CBN News channel. You can also find it on the CBN News app and watch it on YouTube. Coming up, Christians from around the world showing their support for Israel over the last several days as nearly 1,500 from 71 nations traveled to Jerusalem for the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem Feast of Tabernacles celebration. We're going to bring that story to you when we come back. You're watching CBN NewsWatch. The biblical celebration of the Feast of Tabernacles in Jerusalem came to an end last night despite security situations and growing anti-Semitism and anti-Israel sentiments all around. Christians from around the world came up to Jerusalem last week to celebrate the Jewish Feast of Tabernacles and to stand with the Jewish state. CBN News Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl has this story.
Israeli President Isaac Herzog welcomed the crowd and called them a living testament to the words of the prophets.
And I quote, "And it shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all the nations shall go up to worship the King and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles."
Each country represented at the feast came forward with its flag in the roll call of the nations. The U.S. has the largest delegation, but other countries whose governments have been standing against Israel also came.
The Norwegian government, as it is today, is very hostile to Israel, and we're very sorry that that's the situation. Israel will be just fine. I'm more worried about Norway. We need to get our values in order and understand why it's important to stand by Israel.
Bjarte Estebo is a journalist from Norway. Despite Norway's stand on Israel, it's one of the largest delegations at the feast with more than 100 people. He says the pro-Israel community in his country is passionate and understands its obligation to the Bible. As a journalist, he says truth is on Israel's side.
I think the best weapon we have is the truth. I think the truth is also a spiritual weapon. That's why it's in the armor of God. Your belt is the truth.
Joanne Lakuta comes from a town near Manchester, UK, where a synagogue was recently attacked on Yom Kippur. Despite the huge pro-Palestinian marches in London, there are many people in the UK who love Israel. She says Christians need to read the Bible to understand God's plan for the Jewish people.
To see how God called Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, how he reiterated his promises to Israel all through the Old Testament, all through the prophets, how he reiterated time and time again that Israel, the Jewish people, were his people, his chosen ones, how he had a purpose for them, how he was going to bring them back to the land after they've been scattered.
Former ICEJ Director Malcolm Heading received the Nehemiah Award for standing with Israel. He says Israel has been through 2 years of unspeakable war and struggled under world pressure to fight annihilation.
Nevertheless, we have to admit that the miracles that have happened here on behalf of Israel, for her defense and for her survival, in the teeth of overwhelming aggression, are nothing but miraculous. So I see the hand of the God of Israel in the restoration of this people.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Still ahead here at home, our one-on-one interview with South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. The leading Republican in charge of winning more GOP seats speaks out about his prescription to break the country's political divide. We're going to hear from him right after this. House Speaker Mike Johnson warns the current government shutdown could become one of the longest ever. The shutdown comes as Americans are divided in almost every area of public life, from politics to education to religion. South Carolina Senator Tim Scott is offering a prescription to repair the breach, and it is rooted in Judeo-Christian values. CBN's John Jessup spoke with him about finding unity from Main Street to Capitol Hill.
Hello, how are you? Senator Scott, John Jessup. Pleasure to meet you.
As the top Republican in charge of winning more GOP Senate seats in next year's midterms, Tim Scott's focused on the future. That's why he believes the party should be touting recent successes, like record-low border crossings and the One Big Beautiful Bill, rather than being baited by headlines that divide. Do you think the GOP is stepping on its own message of success?
I think the simple message is, the road to socialism leads right through a divided Republican Party. The good Lord has blessed us with victory, in my opinion. Anytime we're talking about something that isn't a promise that we made, that is a promise we were keeping, we're on the wrong topic. And so I have been laser focused as the guy in charge of our re-elections for the senators running for re-election this cycle. Stay on message because it works for us. And frankly, it only works for us because it works for the American people.
We're in the middle of what many would refer to as a housing crisis, not just in terms of housing supply, but affordability.
Yeah.
I know the Senate Banking Committee just passed the Road Housing Act.
Yes.
Unanimously.
Yes, praise the Lord. This issue of housing is a really important issue to me personally.
How did we get here, and what's the plan to fix it?
You know, my mother was unable to buy a home until she was 38 years old. Think about that. Literally, today, the average first-time home buyer is around 38 years old. Why? Prices are too high, supply is too low, and the regulatory environment that exists is just too much. So we have a real strong package because we didn't think red or blue, black or white, rich or poor. I thought about my mom, a single mother, struggling to make her ends meet, wanting to live the American dream. And for so many Americans, that starts with a home.
We're in the middle of, as you mentioned, this dramatic drop in border crossings. We're seeing more detentions and ICE raids. But we're also hearing at CBN from pastors of something that wasn't part of the campaign pledge, people without criminal records who are getting caught up in ICE raids and detentions. This includes recently a pastor in Maryland on the Eastern Shore, and he has no violent criminal record. And that does not seem to fit the campaign pledge to go after the worst of the worst or violent criminal offenders. What are you doing to address that?
Well, I could just simply say the truth to them, which is that if you cross into our country illegally, you've already broken the law. What President Trump has said from a prioritization perspective is he wants violent criminals out of the country. And so you're seeing a strong campaign to eliminate that violent illegal immigrants' presence in our country. That's where his target is. But there's no doubt that there's going to be other folks who have crossed the border illegally that could easily be caught up into that. We know that the vast majority of the people that come into our country across our southern border under the Biden administration did not come from South America. It leads us to one very simple conclusion, that we have sleeper cells in this country that would do Americans harm if they had the opportunity.
Notwithstanding anything that you just said is about sleeper cells and concerns that are national security related, but for a pastor who's been here for 20 years, has no violent criminal record, this is a party that talks about family values and keeping the family a unit. Is the Republican Party ceding any ground?
We could find compassionate story after compassionate story somewhere out there. The truth of the matter is, where do you want us to focus? The average person in this country walking on the streets come up to me and thank me for our position on immigration because it's actually what keeps our country safe. Is that our primary responsibility? 100%. No apology for that.
Scott also makes no apologies for being outspoken about his Christian faith, which weaves into each chapter of his new book, One Nation, Always Under God. Of all the threats we face today, what do you see as the biggest danger facing America today? Or maybe what's the thing that keeps you up at night? The book seems to suggest it is this growing cultural shift away from our shared values.
There's no doubt that when you think about all the issues that we face as a nation, it's hard to not go to John 8:31 and 32. 32 is a very popular verse that says, you will know the truth and it will set you free. I think 31 might be a little bit more important if I was going to put a prioritization into scriptures. The reason why is that 31 says you have to immerse yourself in truth. And our nation today is facing a philosophical disconnect that we believe that there's something called your truth versus my truth. Well, that ain't true. There is an objective truth that can only be found in the gospel of Jesus Christ. And if we stay there, then we'll find ourselves in the best position to remain the city on the hill.
Is this book a rallying cry? And if so, for who?
I hope that it really is a call for a revival of the soul, not just a Christian spiritual revival. But as a country, we need to be revived. I see signs of it. You can look at Ohio State University, where you see the football players on campus praising the Lord. And hundreds and thousands of people are showing up to say yes and amen. When we have great examples that show us that God is still at work in this country, I think it revives the soul. And I think it leads us to a place where we know the best years for this country still ahead of us.
We are sitting here at the NRSC. You wear many hats. As you just mentioned, you're trying to get 22 Republicans elected, maybe even more from the other side. What's next? I know you have a milestone birthday coming up.
Yeah.
What do you think that God has in your future for you?
Well, the good news is I'm confident of one thing. He's not finished with me yet. My goal in life has always been to hear Matthew 25:21. Well done, my good and faithful servant. My only question is, how do I get the most accomplished for the kingdom's sake and for the people I hope to spend eternity with?
For Senator Scott, that's a goal of eternal dividends.
I'd pick him, but I think he's not leaving the Senate.
John Jessup, CBN News, Washington.
And once again, Senator Scott's book is called One Nation, Always Under God, Profiles in Christian Courage. And you can find it wherever books are sold. We're coming back with an encouraging word for your Tuesday. We'll be right back. Time now for your Tuesday Tweetable. Today I want to leave you with this thought to post, tag, tweet, and share with those in your circles of influence. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He doesn't always move the same, however, but his heart is always for you. And God with you is more than the entire world against you. Don't you dare forget it. It's his promise, and our God keeps his word. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. You can always find more of our news programs on the CBN News channel. You can find them there at any time. You can also find them online. That address is cbnnews.com. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can email us, newswatch@cbn.com. You can also reach out and touch us on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Hope to see you right back here, same time tomorrow. Goodbye. God bless. Thank you for watching.